Hello, my name is Sandra. I'm a marriage and family therapist. Uh, I have a license in marriage and family therapy as well as professional counseling. But today, I wanted to focus on this verse because it really does apply to a lot of families and relationships, the way we even advance in life. And it is Proverbs 23 7. Okay. Uh, it goes, for as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he to thee, but his heart is not with thee. Okay. So the word is saying, as he thinks in his heart, so is he. And I will say that is completely true, because a lot of times I will have couples sitting in front of me, or not even couples, it could be individuals, and they will tell me how they are. They're like, oh, I'm kind, I'm the one that's the provider, I'm doing everything. For example, right now, I guess I'm using a husband as the example, and he's telling me all these things that he is. Yet when he starts describing the spouse or his kids or pretty much any other mundane thing, it's weird. It starts getting revealed that a lot of the times what he's telling me and the way he actually is actually not the same thing. So certain ways even that they complain about the spouse will kind of reveal what's actually in his heart, as opposed to what that person is telling me about themselves. And of course, this also applies to women, because will sometimes say, I'm the one that does all the household chores, and they kind of describes themselves as the perfect spouse. But then later with their complaints, you can tell, like, okay, well, it looks like you might also be petty, it looks like you might also be resentful, it looks like you might also be vindictive. And it's the way they describe certain situations. So everything, it doesn't matter how much you're trying to hide it, it just comes out. So my advice to people is, you know what? If you have a bunch of faults, it's way better if you're just transparent. You will get less judgment if you're transparent about your faults than when you're trying to hide them. So, anyways, that's just a little tidbit, a little bit of advice. But this also does go hand in hand with what we call in the psychology world a self-fulfilling prophecy. Pretty much, the way you think, that's what's going to happen. So a lot of times people will have like a poverty mindset. So most of the time, people that have a poverty mindset, it doesn't matter how much money they have or how much money they make. Let's say a person that's very wealthy has a poverty mindset. A lot of times they will limit themselves so much that they actually live like a poor person. They won't turn on the thermostat. They won't indulge in little luxuries, even though they can afford it. Either that, or you see the other extreme. The other extreme is anytime they get a little bit of money, they spend it all. It's almost like somebody that's been hungry, they haven't eaten, so now they have to like hoard all this food or eat it all at once. And it's the same thing that happens with money. Like, let's say they grew up poor and now they have a very well-paying job, but they don't put any money away. They don't put any money away for savings for the future. It's like they feel like they have to eat it all up in the moment. So usually with poverty mindset, you see both extremes. You see a person that completely saves and lives like an actual poor person, or another one that will not, will buy every luxury, will not limit themselves at all. But then they end up actually being poor, like the other ones. Like an example. How many of y'all have seen where somebody wins the lottery and just in a couple years they're back to being poor again? In fact, sometimes, in a couple, well, maybe more than a couple years, but in a few years, they aren't, not only are they poor, a lot of them actually end up in debt. So how crazy is that? I mean, sometimes you're thinking, oh, well, with the amount that they win, you're like, oh, nobody'd be able to spend that in a lifetime. Give that to a person that has a poverty mindset, and they will get it done. So, and it's the same thing with whatever mindset that you have. So another thing that I usually see a lot, so I do see a lot of people that have been remarried, and then, you know, a lot of times I notice with people's second marriages, a lot of times they want to put more effort towards trying to save the marriage, because I do think that a divorce is super painful. I mean, really going through a divorce is like going through a mourning, except the other person hasn't died. Sometimes, in certain occasions, sometimes I almost feel like it's even more painful than if the person did die. But anyways, so usually with couples, like I will see a lot of people that have been married. It'll be their second marriage, third marriage, or fourth marriage, and you know, they'll come to therapy for that. But what I have noticed is, yes, they sometimes do want to put forth more effort, but a lot of times it's almost like they kept their single mindset. Or I'm going to use women for this example. They'll have like the single mom mindset. So usually what I call, I mean, I don't know, I guess I'm coining a new term, the single mom mindset. They, you know, they have their kids, they're usually the only disciplinarian. So when the spouse, you know, they marry somebody, it's like they don't want anybody else disciplining their kids. So then the spouse, the husband, ends up feeling isolated, or doesn't really even feel like they're an actual father figure to his stepkids. And then, you know, later I kind of see sometimes women getting upset because they're not stepping up as stepfathers, but they were limited from the very beginning. They weren't allowed to discipline or support, or, you know, actually have a relationship with their stepkids. So this also single mom mindset, I feel like they also think that everything has to be done by them. So it's all the chores, everything. And it's weird because they do everything, let's say all the household chores, and then they think that their husband isn't helping enough. So they're complaining like, oh, I'm the only one that does all the housework. Whether that's true or not, sometimes it's almost distorted. The husband is actually helping out. He's just not helping out as much as they want. And it's almost sometimes, I mean, I'm not going to say all of them, sometimes it's almost like they got used to complaining about having no help and being single and how hard it is to be single, that when they do get married, it's almost like they kept that other mindset. And well, somebody, you know, sometimes the spouse gets frustrated. It's like, okay, I help and help and help, and it doesn't do anything. You're still complaining about the exact same thing. There's no recognition for the effort that they're putting in the relationship. So sometimes there's also another thing called learned helplessness. It's like, okay, well, it doesn't help for me to put effort, so I'm just going to stop putting effort at all. I mean, I don't get any recognition, so I might as well not put effort and still get the exact same results. So that's what I usually call the single mom mindset. And eventually, usually when people do have that mindset, it leads them back to another divorce, even though that's the last thing that they wanted. But I will say, this self-fulfilling prophecy, you attract what you fear. So a lot of times I tell, you know, to people are like, well, how do you fix this? Like, let's say somebody that's very macho or like a misogynist. Usually they're very controlling, possessive, jealous, but those are all the things that leads the woman away. So they actually end up fulfilling what they fear, because their own behavior is actually leading them that way. So that's why, to a lot of times single women. So single women that are afraid that they're never going to find someone, guess what? They actually attract what they fear, because in their own mind, they become a person that can be somewhat unlikable. Either, either, and what I mean by unlikable could be like very defensive, very critical, super high standards, or they might actually be very flexible, probably almost too flexible that they become a doormat. So a lot of times when it becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy, if you notice, it's going to be extremes. Usually balance is the healthier thing in everything. Money issues, relationships. Usually when you have extremes, I feel like there's usually something wrong. So I don't know if you want to analyze your life or anything for extremes, but most of the time, extremes lead to something not good. Like, for example, women that are afraid of being by themselves or afraid they're never going to find someone become people pleasers. Now they do everything that the other person wants, and sometimes the other person gets bored because it's almost like they don't have a personality at all. They just kind of mold themselves into what they think the other person wants. So, and people don't like that. People fall in love with the person that you are. But if you're never showing that person, then how are they going to fall in love with that person? Because that person's not even showing themselves. So, and usually, people that are people pleasers end up being used and abused and then thrown away. So, and a lot of times it's kind of hard to understand, like, okay, why does this keep happening? But a lot of times, if there's certain things that keep happening, you need to ask yourself, okay, what are the things that I'm thinking? What are my fears? And is it what I'm fearing? Is that what I'm attracting? So you might be looking at your behavior and like, okay, what type of behaviors am I doing that are based off my fears that I can stop doing? So a lot of times yes, it's good to change your behavior, but while you're changing your behavior, it's also really wise to get rid of the fears, which is not an easy task. It's like, get rid of that fear, but it's not an easy task, but it can be done. So a lot of times it's like, like if you're fear of being by yourself, okay, a lot of times, how do you get rid of fears? You learn to embrace those things, or you get exposed to whatever you're fearing. So, like, start enjoying time. Like, let's say, going back to the example of fearing that you're going to end up alone. Start enjoying time with yourself. Take yourself to the movies, go out to eat by yourself. And I'm not saying, a lot of people do this. A lot of people will say, well, I'm always by myself. So I do all these activities, but my question would be, are you enjoying this time by yourself? And a lot of times I feel like the answer is no. So a lot of times it's just kind of embracing that time by yourself and enjoying time by yourself. And I know there's certain things it's like, okay, there is too much time by yourself. Like, it doesn't matter even if you enjoy alone time, it can get creepingly lonely. So sometimes you don't have to have a romantic partner to be able to do stuff with. Look for friends, look for social activities that you can do with other people, so you can already start making connections. And like physics, energy creates more energy. So a lot of times you start attracting, you might even attract a romantic partner once you start nourishing these other relationships, friendships, or even relationships with your family. I don't know how this all came about just focusing on relationships, but the whole point of this video is to focus, like, what is your mindset? Whether it's in relationships, economics, whatever your mindset is, or it's pretty much, that's what's going to happen. And like it says in the Bible, you know, Proverbs 23:7. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Okay, so change the way you think in your heart. So in order for things to change, you need to change the way you think. Okay, and there's lots of verses that tell us how to think. God told us how to think. So he pretty much spelled it out for us. If you see my previous video about what you focus on, I talk more about the other verses that, you know, God's telling you how to think. A lot of times we need to read the Bible and be able to literally apply what it says. A lot of times I feel like we kind of take it like a philosophy book, not something that you apply in real life, but there is a lot of practical advice that's on here. And I mean, that's what God wanted for us to follow his word. So anyways, I will leave you guys with that. If you find this helpful, you can leave a comment, you can like my video, you can subscribe to my channel, whatever you think. Or if you have any questions, you can also ask a question on the comment. Or if there's a certain topic that you want me to cover, obviously I can just cover any topic, but maybe if I do have knowledge on that topic, I will do my best to do so. So, because I know I get a lot of calls to, you know, to help kids with autism or drug addiction. And I really actually don't know very much on how to deal with that population. So there are definitely things that people think that because you are a therapist that you should be able to know, but usually it is very specialized. So anyways, so I will leave you guys with that, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys next time.